The first thing I've got to do is make sure that those little aluminium tags are pushed through the slots in the top cover, and I'm doing that by pushing a screwdriver blade either side of those tabs to make sure they're coming through the brass correctly. I'm looking at the state of this from the side to make sure that this is fixed firmly to the top cover. It looks good. And now I can stake those aluminium pieces over . It won't take much. Be gentle doing this. If you get over enthusiastic, you will end up breaking the viewfinder glass, and then you'll have all the fun of taking it apart to fix again. That's fine. That's back in place, that's firm, and our viewfinder window looks good. So, panic over. Back to the main windows at the front. And I'm just going to wipe these over once more. I've done a pretty good job of cleaning these, but I just need to make sure there are no smears on them. Yeah, still some dirty marks there. Again, I've got the window light coming in from the side of me here. It enables me to judge how clean that glass is quite well from the reflections. And there's certainly some dirt on this edge here still. There's some imperfection right there too, which is possibly a scratch. Yeah, it is a scratch. It must have been on the outside of the window. Yeah. Oh, I think we're stuck with that scratch. I'm not replacing that window for the sake of a small scratch. Right, I'll slide this into place. It's held in with the retainer to the right there. We have our two standoffs, and the standoffs only going in one direction. They're not really symmetrical. Of course, you couldn't see any of that because I got it round the wrong way for you. There's your standoffs there and there. And then the frame goes on over the top of those, and I want one screw in place there while I try and lower this thing into position. I have to get the screws through the standoff or standoffs and into the hole in the top cover. And in an ideal world that all lines up very quickly. That wasn't too bad. Get the second one in place. Now I'll loosen those screws off slightly. Two things I've got to do. I've got to get this window settled neatly into position. I've also got to pull this back down out of the way so I can get the rangefinder window slid into place. And the rangefinder window, I want to clean that one more time. Right, that's clean. Now I'll slide that into it's like a tray really, the frame for it here. Push that back up into against the front of the top cover. Make sure this window's sitting correctly. Push that all to the front and do up those two screws. Let's look at that window. Yeah, there's that scratch. It's a bit obvious, isn't it? It's certainly a scratch. I may have to find another piece of glass for that. It's made more obvious because there's a bit of dirt in the scratch. It doesn't want to come out. If I reverse that glass and have the scratch on the inside, it will be less obvious. That might be worth a go. I'll try that. Just pull that glass out. Flip it. Here I can see a mark. I can see a mark on the top cover. There's a scratch that runs over the chrome at this point, and almost certainly that lined up with that. Let's have a look. So it's accidental damage from some time long ago, and I'm guessing it's set that way up. Yeah, that's it alright. I can even see the dent in the cover at that point. Now I'm going to leave it like that. So that's our glass back in place. And the last thing I want to do here is put the spring back on the frame counter. So it hooks round the frame counter there and into this knot, this hole in the black frame right there. Let's get that hook back over, that's better. And that's the return spring for the frame counter. So our frame counter advances normally now. Our meter needle, it moves normally. We've got a scratch in that glass on the viewfinder, but at least you can see the scratch now. It was so filthy previously that you couldn't even see the scratch. And what are we missing here? Well, we're missing a shoe. I need to find a shoe, which means I need to find a donor. Well, here's the donor. This is a slightly later top cover, but still the same design. Let's put the shoe on here. And give that shoe a bit of a wipe. That's by no means a pristine accessory shoe, but it's in keeping with the general condition of the top cover. And it's all complete now. We have a meter dial that swings normally, and the meter, you can see everything through it. That's all good. The rangefinder next. Have a look at this. The edge of the prism's all chipped. It typically happens when someone who doesn't know what they're doing replaces the shutter cocking rack, and in the fight of getting it in position they end up chipping that. That's fairly common. I'll see what this looks like looking out the window. Oh, it's still exceptionally cloudy, so even though I thought most of the filth was on the outside windows of the top cover, unfortunately that's not the case. This is as filthy as. So we need to take this apart. So first I'll remove the pin for the spring. I'll start with a stiff pair of tweezers, see if I can undo that screw. First I'm going to scribe a line around the end of that arm so I know exactly where that arm went back, because that can be shifted, and if it's not in the same position when it goes back, you end up with problems. But that did come loose with a pair of tweezers. There's the arm off, the screw, wavy washer, and the bronze bush or brass bush. The spring's fallen off the arm, and here's the bush that goes in the body. It slides up and down here and gives you adjustment for this position. This is all fairly filthy. To remove this prism at the end, there are two screws here. They also form the adjustment screws for the vertical alignment. I'm removing those completely from this body. Prism just comes out of the end. Single screw at the back. Holds this mask on the back, and that mask holds the rear viewfinder glass lens in place. That's flat on the outside, convex on the inside. We'll remove one of these retainers. Always remove this one. Now, there's a retaining spring clip frame on the back here. I'll remove that. Here we have the rear frames, silvered frames, the glass you can hardly see through, and just a black mask that goes towards the back. At the front we have a mask, a spring clip rather, much the same, and this will have a touch of lacquer top and bottom. and I need to soften that with some acetone before I separate those parts. Right, a drop of acetone on the top, drop of acetone on the bottom, add another drop at the top, let this lot soak in a bit. The acetone's job is to stop this lens at the front here from being able to move either to the left or the right, because any movement there would affect the position of your rangefinder image, the coincidence point. Now here I'm just pressing down on this mask here with my fingernail gently to separate the glass, the rear glass, the glass here with the silvered frame on it, from the rest of the assembly. Here's the mask that went in between. If I press gently on this, I can remove this. This is the mask that gives us our parallax correction points, and there's the front glass. Now I've just got the frame here. It's got the semi-silvered mirror in it. There's nothing else in here of note. That semi-silvered mirror is obviously pretty filthy, particularly the inside surface in this case, which is the silvered surface, and if you touch that you'll end up stripping the silver off it, in which case you'll have a coloured piece of glass instead of a semi-silvered mirror, and it won't work well. So I'm just going to clean the grease off here, off this surface. Now interestingly, that's a bit discoloured there. Not sure what's going on there. Anyway, I wanted that off. That's all I need to do with that. This is going into the ultrasonic cleaner. Here we have the arm. And I'm just going to scribe a mark across here so I know I can get my bush back in the right position. So now I can see which way up that bush went and where it fitted. Because the bush has a split in it. It's a circular bush, but look at the state of that cotton bud coming off there. That's dried grease there. That's it's a bit burned out. That's just dried grease. That's all that filth's got to come off. There's a hint of corrosion there too, on that top surface of the arm. Yes, most definitely, because the arm is steel. There's some rust there. If there's rust gets in between two working surfaces, then obviously it'll create friction and the arm wouldn't move smoothly. I don't think that's the case here, but certainly this arm is a bit stained. I'm just rubbing the tip of the screwdriver over that to make sure that if there are any high spots, I just take them away. I'm not concerned about low spots, they're not going to cause me any problems. I think that'll be fine. So, the viewfinder components here, let's get them all in the frame. As you can see, the rangefinder's got a few pieces to it, and all of this has to be clean, and moving parts need to be moving freely in order for the rangefinder to work correctly. So my next task is to clean up my two mirrored pieces of glass here, the ones with the mirrored frame lines on them. I'll clean those as well as I can manually, and they'll almost certainly be still a bit smeary at that stage, but they can go in back into the frame and go into the ultrasonic cleaner and be cleaned complete, because I always clean this semi-silvered mirror at the back here, or I don't take that out. I always clean it in the body in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I've found that that's a great way to avoid stripping silvering off the mirrors, providing you're judicious in how much time you give it in the cleaner, and avoid doing any physical damage to it, removing it and replacing it. Right, these two pieces of glass. Now the silvering is tarnished and is pretty much gone on these windows. There's still enough there to give us our frame lines. They just will not be as bright and cheerful as they once used to be. You'd be correct if you were assuming that there are no new parts, and I am extremely reluctant to replace parts like this unless I absolutely need to. I'd replace them if they were broken. I'd replace them if they completely lacked silver on one of them or both of them. I probably wouldn't be able to find perfect replacements to go in there. I'd be able to find improvements. There's about 20 glass air surfaces in one of these rangefinder systems. That's enough to cause problems. Get these correctly oriented in the body. The silver lines are on, the silver is on one side of the glass, not both sides of the glass. It makes a difference which side of the glass the silver is on if you want those lines to be correctly focused. So I'll pop them back in the frame, in the body of the rangefinder, and put their keeper, their retainer back on. So this piece can now go through the ultrasonic cleaner, and while that's being cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner, I can clean the front glass and its surround here with the parallax marks on it. Now this is a piece of celluloid or something. It's not affected by acetone, I know from experience, so I can clean that with acetone and remove the lacquer that's run onto it. I'll need to clean this little prism here. Obviously two faces are easy to get to, the front and the back, but there's the internal one in here that also needs to be cleaned. Just glass cleaner on a cotton bud will do that. On the moving arm, this glass lens here needs to be cleaned. I'm looking at this now, it's fairly clean, a little bit hazy, and of course the rear lens for the rangefinder here needs to be cleaned. Alright, I'm just going to clean the rangefinder body now and putting that into a glass filled with warm water and a little bit of dishwasher detergent. The rest of the tank is just filled up with warm water. I'll give that 3 minutes. Typically that's enough. And you probably don't need to hear that buzzing for 3 minutes, so I won't subject you to that. The rangefinder is back from the ultrasonic cleaner. It got its 3 minutes. It's all came up good. There's some marking on this glass here. This is the front piece with the silvered lines on it. Now the silvered lines on there, on the front glass it has the small rectangle. The silvered lines are on the inside edge, towards the inside of the rangefinder, not to the front. The rear piece of glass with its silvered lines, that has the larger rectangle. The silvered lines on that point to the front of the rangefinder. If you've got that glass in back to front, it's not going to work well. Right, where are we? Here's the front lens, and I'll put that mask in place. There's a little mask that sits on there. It just sort of clips on in place, holds it firmly in the centre. Check there's no dust in there. That slides in at the front. Then I've got the frame lines, the parallax lines mask that goes on the front. Then there's two, got our retainer clips that hold the glass and masks in. Now this plain rectangular mask goes behind the glass in the middle. I'll slide its retainer clip in place. I'll do the same for the front components. So our front components and the middle components are all in place. Here's our rear glass, the eyepiece lens if you like. That's held in place with a mask. And one small screw. I'll get that screw in place. This bracket goes on the side here, and that holds all the glass in place here. I'm going to look out the window now and see if that's clear to look through. It should be nice and clear with visible frame lines. That's good. That's exactly what I wanted. It's a vast improvement over the mess it was before. The prism. The prism's been cleaned. Where are you? There you are. Prism's been cleaned. 3 faces all cleaned with glass cleaner. It goes in there. There are 2 small screws. They both hold it in place and will adjust the vertical alignment. Just check that's pushed back into the body, that's good. Now we've got the moving arm. The moving arm's got 1 glass lens in there. I've cleaned that. And I've got these components all need to be cleaned. Cleaning these with a bit of naphtha just to get the old grease and any dirt off them. If there's any corrosion on the wavy washer, you may want to scrape that off, make sure that's nice and clean. I'll take some molybdenum paste, wipe around the centre where the bronze bush goes, put that bronze bush in place, and I had an alignment mark I'd scratched on it so it goes back in exactly the same place. That was taken off when the rangefinder was back at the infinity position. it's going back in the same position, it should be good. I'm going to wipe a bit of molybdenum paste on the top surface of this arm. Not much, you only need a tiny smear. It's a dirty mark you're putting on there more than anything else. Now, to fit this in place, we've got to get this bush back in place. It goes to the on the inside here. I find that with those curved jaw tweezers I can get it in place. Pop a screwdriver through the top there to hold it in place. If the camera will focus, no buddy, you're not going to. If the camera was going to focus, you could see the bush here in the slot. It's not sitting square either, just to cause me grief. Let's see if I can get that in position. For some reason it doesn't want to fit in place. That looks like it. That's better. And you can't see anything because the camera won't frame and focus. Thinking about it? No, it's doing nothing. Anyway, there's the thread visible there. Now the spring has come unhooked from the arm of the rangefinder. The loops on the end of it are a little bit opened up. I'm going to close them slightly before I put that back. I'll just use this pair of round-nosed pliers to close those loops up slightly. That's good. Now I'll fit this in place on the arm. There's a little hole in the arm right next to that adjustment screw there. That's where that spring fits. I'll see if I can get it hooked into place. Of course, I've just closed the end of it up, probably slightly too much, so it's reluctant to fit around the corner and into the hole. There we go, that's it in place. Back to here. I'll zoom out a bit, perhaps a little focusing. Back to here. Let's get this arm in position. So hook that arm into position like that. I've got this still sitting up on the screwdriver so that I can, that's holding that bush in place. Just running a bit of molybdenum paste around that top surface around the bush. Put the wavy washer there. Take the pinhead screw. Run that down. Now I've got my scratch mark here that I put there before I disassembled it, so I'm going to loosen that screw up slightly, push the arm, bush and everything towards the end there until that line is where I want it to be. Do that screw up. Take the pin that retains the spring, hook it through the spring, of course it doesn't want to go, that's better. Bring that back and hook it into place. There's the arm returning smoothly. Now I'll check out the window and see what the image looks like. And I can see that my moving image is very, very low. So I need to slightly loosen the screw here at the back and tighten the screw at the front. And it's still a bit low. A little bit more, loosen the one at the back, tighten the one at the front. It's almost there. I'm only turning these very small amounts. If anything, that's slightly high at the moment. I'll just tighten the one at the back. That's good for height. The images don't quite meet at infinity, so I'll slacken off this screw here, which allows the arm to move back further at the rest position. That's it. So the rangefinder's good. It's good at infinity. Of course, it's not on the camera yet, so there's still more adjustments to make sure that the arm here matches the focus scale ring of the camera. But the rangefinder itself is good. At its rest position, it comes back to match up the images at infinity target. The image is nice and clear and bright. The frame lines are visible. That's just ready to go. So that's a good rangefinder.